Derby County. Now, I don't think this is particularly pertaining to Wayne Rooney. This is more towards the fact that Derby County, would you believe it, could yet be relegated from the Sky Bet Championship. The club has lost an appeal over whether or not the EFL could sanction Derby County for a breach of financial rules. Now, it's understood this morning that EFL insiders are saying that any sanctions more likely to be imposed next season. But the lack of certainty is going to cause concern at a time when the club only narrowly avoided the drop and is already in pretty dire financial trouble and is still up for sale because the sale to Eric Alonso has still not been confirmed yet. Where do you stand on this?
Well, look, I mean, the Derby situation, we had Mel Morris on this show 2 years ago when Derby were first having the challenges about the way that they valued their stadium. They revalued it on their balance sheet, and also the way that they value their players and the way that they depreciate their players. So, for example's sake, a player that's bought for £10 million every year on a 4-year contract depreciates by £2.5 million. So after the end of the first year, he's worth 7.5. End of the second year, he's worth 5. Derby didn't do that. They did a different kind of valuation of players. But the EFL have known about this accountancy principle since 2018, and they've taken a long time to get around to it. Now, when Derby were brought up on the charges originally, they overcame the EFL's obligation, and the EFL brought an appeal and took it to an independent commission, which now has found that they don't like the accountancy principles that were deployed. And it has two reaching effects. It means that there's a sanction that's available to the EFL for their breaching of certain processes, but it also means that it takes Derby back into financial fair play breaches as well, because part and parcel, and if you remember the time when we had Mel in here, I said, cute Mel, very cute, revaluing the stadium to ensure that you're in a certain position. And he had a counter argument. I still said, cute, Mel, very cute. And they're trying to unwind that, which means that not only are they in sanction breaches for this particular scenario, also they'll have financial fair play scenarios where they've breached the loss of. If you're a championship club, you're allowed to lose. Ridiculous that it is being allowed to lose anything, but the governance of the game says you're allowed to lose £39 million over 3 years. And if you lose more than that, then you start to fall into the area of sanctions, which Birmingham fell foul of. If you remember, Birmingham got a series of, because they constantly breached it over that 3-year period, and they got a big points sanction. Now, look, that will come into play and Derby will get some sanctions. I can't believe, and I don't believe, that the EFL will have the balls to make them retrospective. They didn't make them retrospective with Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday's transgressions were previous seasons that were brought into this season. This is why Sheffield Wednesday got a 12-point penalty, reduced to 6 on appeal. So that's why Sheffield Wednesday got relegated this year, in essence, and Derby stayed up. It's because Sheffield Wednesday got a 6-point penalty.
So what's the worst case scenario for Derby?
Well, the worst case, in my view, the worst case scenario is they get a sanction that takes them back for the completion of this season. In the real world, I think they'll probably get a sanction next season, which means they'll start with some form of points deduction for the beginning of next season.
Why wouldn't they do it this season?
Because there's no form for it. And if you look at the examples in the paper that's been put in the Daily Mail about all the sanctions, 90% of them are for clubs going into administration. They're not for clubs that have breached financial fair play or broken certain regulations. They're predominantly clear for clubs that have gone into administrations. Of course, there are exceptions like teams like Macclesfield that just kept on breaching, kept on defying the EFL around player salaries and paying their wages and whatever else, that in the end, they couldn't do anything else but sanction them. But Derby are in a situation where the EFL have won an appeal. The problem with this is this has been going on for a long, long time. This has been going on since 2018 when it was brought to the EFL's attention. Hang on a second, the way Derby are valuing their players isn't right. It isn't in accordance with accountancy principles that the game is governed by. Whether we like those accountancy principles, whether they're fair and equitable, these are the principles that 99% of all clubs have to accept. And Derby wanted to change their methodologies, and there's a good reason behind it. And I think Mel's not wrong, but they're not allowed to do that. And they argued about it, and now on appeal, the EFL have brought a case which basically has been accepted by an independent commission, which is no, you can't do this. So now comes down the sanctions. And if you haven't sanctioned Sheffield Wednesday for their transgressions in real time, how are you going to sanction Derby?
Exactly. Well, if you're Wickham or Rotherham, who have gone down, would you be putting a bit of pressure on the EFL here?
sporting merit is something we always argue about, isn't it? We're arguing about sporting merit and saying, look, really and truly, there's a sanction available for the breaches of financial fair play. There was an argument to be had here which has been lost. It's a technical argument. It's a boring argument for most people to listen to because they want to hear about who scored which goal and when. But this is about how football clubs account. And, of course, the narrative now is Wayne Rooney's in at Derby, ownership struggles, club's been in a real free-fall economically, owner coming in, some of the people are beginning to question where he's getting his money from. So it all makes a very nice story, but I don't see that Derby, I just don't see the EFL, Trevor Birch or not, who's got the courage of his convictions, I just don't see that they will have the ability to say we're going to take that back to the 2021 season.
Sure.
They've just announced the verdict when the season's finished. I mean, that should give you the clue, shouldn't it?
For sure. I mean, even though we like Mel and we got on well with Mel.
Yeah, I like Mel a lot.
Have they sailed close to the wind here?
Well, they've been cute, like a lot of football clubs are, and Mel had a very good case and a very good reason for revaluing the stadium. But the only reason it was done, and Mel can't deny this, was that they knew they had issues with financial fair play. So the fact that Mel had to revalue the stadium, and he had a good reason behind it, it was an investment in the stadium, they were going to gather revenue streams that came into play for outside stadiums, outside concerts and all that kind of stuff. Well, all of those must have fallen by the wayside, mustn't they? Because there hasn't been any revenue generated. So when Mel got a valuation of Pride Park at 81 million, it was basically being driven by the alternate use that it could have.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't think they've set out to defraud, but their whole objective was to overcome financial fair play, which a lot of people have tried to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered doing it. The reasons why he revalued the stadium was because they knew they had a pinch with financial fair play, and here it comes to play. This particular challenge is about player values and how you value a player and your accounting of player values. They've been overturned on this, but this has another effect because not only does it say you can't value players that way, and that's a breach of league rules, you also now lead into the territory where you have actually breached the financial governance of £39 million of losses on that basis. So we get you twice.
Well, just to add to Derby's woes, I mean, we speak to him on a semi-regular basis, and he says, no, the club is going to be mine. Eric Alonso, the Spanish businessman, there are already concerns that this deal, as long as it remains not rubber-stamped, Alonso remains in the process of buying the club, but there still are fears that he doesn't have the funds required for the takeover. Simon, that was a Drop Zone with William Hill Vegas.